In the 1960s, well before the TSA era, I lived about 20 minutes from Idlewild Airport, which today is JFK in New York. And every weekend I would be on the bus and subway and get to the airport and just spent all the weekends sketching airplanes. I was actually allowed out on the ramp, standing in front of a jet, drawing it as a drawing pad. People would come up and go, "Kid, what are you doing?" "I'm making a picture of the airplanes. I'm going to be an artist when I grow up." One of those subjects was a jet helicopter flown by a company called New York Airways. And it connected all the airports in New York, LaGuardia, Newark, and Idlewild, in a 25-passenger jet-powered helicopter called the Boeing Vertol 107. I was in love with this machine. I was fascinated with it. So I spent a lot of time at the New York Airways gate. Well, and eventually the manager of the site, a wonderful gentleman named John Sloan, came over and he said, "You're here every weekend. What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm going to make a painting of the helicopter. This is the finished art." And he said, "We'd really like to hang this up in the boardroom at our headquarters building at LaGuardia. Could we trade 2 round-trip tickets in exchange for the painting?" And I suddenly realized that my artwork had value that transcended a monetary amount. This meant something to the people who were involved with the machine. That was the secret of the rest of my career. This exhibit is very exciting to me. It hasn't been since art school that I've had such a blank palette of possibilities to create new, fresh art that will be seen by the public for the very first time in this exhibit. I'm being given such an amazing opportunity to document and preserve the history out here in Riverside in terms of aviation.
Riverside actually has a surprisingly deep connection to the history of aviation and to the world of flight, as it were.
This exhibit here in Riverside is very profound in the sense that there's so much aviation history in this area. 2 major entities are here, the first being Flabob Airport, home of the Experimental Aircraft Association, Chapter 1. I have a tribute to Ray Stitz, one of the real pioneers in general aviation, founder of EAA Chapter Number 1, an amazing pilot and designer of home-built airplanes who just recently passed away in his mid-90s. And March Air Force Base, one of the oldest Air Force bases in the Air Force history, been here since the late 20s, early 30s, and is still operational today. The Strategic Air Command was centered at March for many years. And there'll be a number of paintings dedicated to that part of the mission of the Air Force at March, telling that story.
March Air Force Base was one of the largest Air Force bases in terms of its footprint of ground that it covered. At one point, it was the largest operational air base in the United States. They have a fantastic museum over at March, which has a great collection of historic artifacts and historic aircraft, many of which have been Mike's direct inspiration for a lot of the paintings that are going to be shown.
This airplane is a very significant machine in history. And a very significant airplane to me personally. This is the Republic F-105 Thunder Chief. It's an Air Force fighter bomber. First flew on October 22nd, 1955.
He has this enormous wealth of knowledge. He's about to publish a book on the history of aviation, so he's very well versed in different types of aircraft and how they function, and things like the way the engines are put together, and things that most artists don't necessarily verse themselves in. It's not just about his ability to produce a painting, but he's really delved into the industry.
I was born into this business, come from an aviation family. I had an uncle who was a designer for a top aviation manufacturing company back on the East Coast.
He just has all these amazing stories that showcase that knowledge.
Just to the story of how the F-105 got its name. Shared it with too many people. First flew in 1955. I was a young boy in the early 50s. Uncle George was very proud of his association with the Air Force. Oh, he gave me a call sign. First love at the time, which fire engines. It was just a really exciting subject to me as a kid. So my call sign was Little Chief. In 1955, the F-105 flew, and the company had a Name the Plane contest for its senior executives. And Uncle George submitted my call sign. The companies had themes to their names.
Republic was the word thunder, and the airplane in July of 1956 became the F-105 Thunder Chief. The name is now legend, and I was very excited to be associated with it.
I've been so privileged. I've flown with the Air Force, I've landed on aircraft carriers, I've done all these amazing things and then painted those for the people who were the source of those opportunities. And the artwork was again, far beyond any sort of monetary amount. And the paintings today are hanging in the Pentagon and in every airline corporate headquarters all around the world. It's an honor, but it all started with that helicopter ride where I realized there's a power to this artwork, and if I can convey a moment in these people's lives, an experience that they can hang on the wall and have forever, then I've done something special.